It? Is it? Is it lit?
Christmas time. We're all lit.
All right. It's pretty lit.
Yeah.
It shook.
I don't understand.
All right.
Good or is it bad?
So we're gonna build a new project today, and I'm gonna show you guys how to use like a loading view controller to like load your stuff, cache the images that you need to load, or anything that requires time to load in. We're gonna make a little animation that like simulates like a loading like time, and then after that's done, we're gonna go and transition from our loading view controller to our main view controller, which shows all the stuff. Okay.
Could you also send it to GitHub?
Yes, I'm recording this now, and I'll also do the GitHub repo.
No, but that we can
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
recording a video, or are you recording? Don't update your
I'm,
computer.
yeah, I'm recording you guys. We're gonna set. You're gonna be looking at yourselves, all right? Or not using core data.
Oh, I meant like the stuff to sending it to GitHub.
Oh, you want to? Okay. Okay. So, yeah. Why don't we just do that now? Make this smaller.
The stuff to send it to GitHub.
Okay. So before I even start, I'm gonna commit it to GitHub. Okay. And then at the end, I'm gonna recommit it again and just push the changes. Okay. So what you want to do is, when you created your project, there was the check mark that said make local Git repository, and by default that's checked, and you'll have a local Git repository on your Mac. And what you want to do is you want to go to GitHub. Uh-oh. So while that's running, I want to show you guys this the Star Wars one that I made. Right? It's actually utilizing the stuff that we're going to build today. Oops, too big. But yeah, you see, like here, if you see the text on the bottom, loading force powers, that means that I was in my view controller for the loading screen.
So is that your initial view that you set?
This is my home view controller.
Oh, the load page.
The load page is my loading view controller. So that's only a separate thing that I only need for loading stuff. Once it's done loading, it'll go to the home one, right? So cool. So that's that. It looks like I have internet. So you're in GitHub, right? You have this page where you can create a new repository. So you click on that, and the repository name, I'm going to call it loading cache demo, and then you will make it a public repository, create it, and then you have this URL here, and you're just going to click on the clipboard to copy it. Once it's copied, you go to your project, you go up to source control, this loading cache demo master, and then at the bottom here you have the configure. This will pop up. You go to remotes, add a remote with the plus sign, add remote, and then in the address you just paste in whatever that was, and you add it in, done. And then you go back to source control and you're going to commit. This will commit it to your local Mac, but right now we don't have any changes. It's not going to let me commit anything. As soon as I make some changes here, like all right, save that. Now if I go to source control commit, I'll see that there was a change, right? So here I'm going to say this is my first commit. That's the message. And if I just click this commit files, it'll just commit it to my local Git in my Mac. But I want to push it to the GitHub. So I check this button here, and then I'll commit it, and it'll just push it to GitHub automatically. Right? You need a password and okay. So it's going to push, and now if you go to GitHub and refresh this page, you should see that it's there. Okay. So now that we have that set up, let's take a look at what we want to do. So in this app, it's loading the force powers, and then it's loaded the force powers. And what it does specifically for my app is it uses Almofire image to take the API of the images and cache those images, because those are things that take like a long time to kind of process, and you don't want to do that on the fly as you're generating your cells, because it'll make your thing super laggy, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to go to main storyboard, and by default it's given us this view controller here, right? So I'm going to make another view controller, just put it onto the side like that. And before I do anything, I'm going to create my custom view controller classes. Right, so this one is going to be the main view controller. And then I'm going to create another class. So Command N, Swift file. I'm going to name this one the loading view controller. I'm going to create that. I'm just going to put this on top of the main one to show me that it's going to happen before the main one. I'm going to copy all the stuff I have in the main one. I'm just going to paste it in here and then change the name. Loading view controller. Cool. So once I have those two custom view controllers created, I go back to my main storyboard. I'm setting this one to be the loading view controller. I'm setting this one to be the main view controller. Okay? And I got to give this guy a storyboard ID. I'm just going to call it main VC, like that. Okay, so notice that when the app launches, this arrow is pointing to the loading view controller. So it's going to start loading stuff, right? So we want to kind of simulate it's going to load, right? So we're going to make, let's say, view. Just going to put it here in the middle, like that. It doesn't really matter, but we're going to have it so that it's this. We're going to put a label up here. Oh, for the view, I want to make sure that I can see it. So I'm going to give it some color, this color here. For the label, I'm just going to put it on top of the view, like that. And I'm going to give this some constraints. So top, left, right, add those 3 constraints. And then for this loading bar, I'm going to give it some constraints, top, left, right, and the height. Cool. So if I click on the label, let's say I want to give the label some height as well. Okay, so now everything's blue. So for label, I want your text to be in the middle. Maybe I want your font to look nice. So I can give you this font, and I'm going to say loading force powers, like that. And this is going to be my loading bar. Okay, so in order for us to actually use those, we're going to have to drag in the outlets. All right, so in my loading view controller, I'm going to go ahead and drag in those outlets. So I got my loading force powers here. That one I'm not going to use. This view I am going to use. So I'm going to say, you know what, actually, let's do it the right way, okay? So we got this view that I want to target, and I'm going to say this is the loading bar background view. And over here, I'm going to create another view. And you can do this, like if you hold down, I believe it's Option, and you just drag down, you can just make a duplicate of that. Right? So I'm going to give this guy some other color, and I'm going to say you are going to start from the left. You're going to be on top of this guy, and you're going to be pinned to the top, bottom, left, and you're going to have a width. Okay? So now for this view, I'm going to make an outlet, and this is the loading bar view. And also, the thing I'm going to change is this loading bar view's width. So in here, there's the constraints, there's the width. Right now it's 299. I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to say loading bar width constraint. And it's going to be a NS layout constraint. Cool. So when the view did load, I'm going to call a function that says, I'm going to load some stuff now. Okay, and in that function, I'm just going to write it here. These are the helper functions, helper methods. Here, I'm going to write a function. I'm just going to load some stuff. Right? In the view to load, I'm going to call this function self.load some stuff. There. And in the load some stuff, I'm going to run an animation that loads this bar. Okay?
Make that a little larger.
Yeah. Oops, wrong one. All right, good. All right. I don't want to make it too large because then you can't see, much of the stuff. So in here, we're just going to use the stuff that we did yesterday, right? With the animations. So we're going to say, in the beginning, before I call this function, I want to set this guy's width to 0, right? So I go self dot loading bar width constraint dot constant equals to 0. That will make sure that it's not showing me anything. All right, so here I'm going to say self dot loading bar width constraint. It's going to be equal, dot constant. It's going to be equals to the loading bar, the width of the loading bar. So that is going to be self dot loading bar view dot frame dot width. So it's going to make it the full width of the loading bar. Okay, and if we want it to animate, then we're going to have to use the animation code that we had, the other day, and that is, let me see, it's got to be like an animate something here. This one. There, code to start animation. Right, I always copy this block of code because I can't really memorize it. So we're going to copy this down here, and we're going to start to animate this with the duration of, let's say, 2 seconds, with a delay of, let's say, 0.5 seconds. Okay, we're going to not do some crazy damping here, so we're just going to make it 9. Initial velocity 7, cool. And when we're finished, I want you to print finished loading. Right, so this is to simulate when you're actually making API calls or whatever. Like, we're doing the animation just to simulate this time, but in reality, when you build your app, it's going to be this load some stuff will contain a function that makes an API call of some sort to load some stuff. And then once you're done loading the stuff, then you would write this. Yeah.
So this animation thing is kind of no different than we did yesterday.
Yep.
Like, it's
Yep.
very similar.
Yes. So the purpose of this animation is just to demonstrate the loading process. Right. In the reality, you would actually you want the bar to like load according to how much data you got, right? And it could be animated, but it doesn't need to be. Right. So let's just go ahead and run this on the iPhone 5 that I have up and see what happens. Yeah, maybe we should like invert these colors, I think. Make this guy like really light. Let's make this like that. Make this guy the purple one. Oops, let's see. Let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. Oh, okay. So this is a known issue that I have kind of like, wrestled with for a very long time. So it happens that you can't do any animations in the view did load. And because I'm calling this in the view did load, that's why it's making that weird thing. So I have to do it like this. I have to put it in the view up here. So override func view did appear. So the view is already appeared. Now I'm gonna do this stuff. Here. If I do that, then it should look legit.
So fast.
No, it didn't even do this. Oh, maybe this is the problem. So I'm gonna try something here. My suspicion is that it's this was the problem and it wasn't doing it. So I can make it 0. Go 1 second. Art width constraint, yeah, it looks good. Let's make this -20. Cool. That's not good. Doesn't look like it's animating at all. Well, let's just make a button. So when I click the button, I want it to animate, just to make things easier. So here, make an action, button, clicked, right button, touch up inside. When I do that, I want you to load some stuff. This guy is still gonna go in the view did load. Here. So we don't need that anymore. Here. That's where'd the button go? Ah, see? It's kind of like hidden. Okay. Let's move this back. Yeah, my auto layout is really bad. So we can make this button top space. Yeah, let's just get rid of all these constraints. These are bad constraints. So good constraints would be if I make the button like this, I just put it on the top here, or I can, center this horizontally, and I'll give it a width and top 25. There, that's good constraint. Okay, so you already know that it works. If we click the button, it's going to animate, and once it's done animating, it's going to go to finish loading. It's going to print that. Okay. Yeah, animations don't work very well when you just load the page. So click the button, it's going to load. When it's done loading, it's going to print finish loading. All right, animation's a little off, but forgive me. Just pretend that it's seamless, right? So once you're done loading stuff, now this is where you want to go from this loading view controller to this main view controller. And also, because you loaded some stuff, now you're going to have some data, right? So, we can say, let's say, let my data equals to an array with, or we can just do it, make it easy. It can be any data structure, but we're just going to make it a string. It's like, hello, I'm the data, like that. And we got that from our API, okay? So now, this is the tricky part, right? So when the view loads, the arrow is pointing to the loading bar, the loading view controller, but we want it to actually go to our the main view controller, right? So how do we change this arrow to go from here to over here, right? We don't want to segue. We don't want to like put it on top. We want to like straight up just transfer over to this one as if the app just loaded, right? But in order to do that, you're going to have to use the app delegate, right? And the code to do that is like this. Let me show you. I have it over here. So in my loading screen view controller, let me make this full size for you so you can read it. Make this a little larger. Well, maybe that's too large. Okay, so this is what happens, okay? So when the view did load, or when the view did appear, I am gonna set my background. I'm gonna call this function start loading stuff, right? And that is a function that I've defined up here, start loading stuff. And it's gonna go to Alma Fire, it's gonna go to my API, get back my data, and it's gonna use Alma Fire image to go and grab those images from Imager. And then it's gonna save them in this variable. And the variable is gonna be called the cache. Okay, so here. That is the cache, is where I'm storing all those images. So now, after I'm done loading this stuff, I'm gonna go down to this, do this after all the images are cached. And it's gonna say, hey, if the cache.count is equal to my API, array.count, then I know that it's done. So I call this function, which is this one here, right? I call this function and I pass in the cache that I just cached. And then I pass it into this function, and it's going to take in the argument that I passed in, and it's going to do this work here of going to the app delegate, sending this information to the app delegate, and then the app delegate will now handle the transition to this new view controller, okay? And what I'm doing here, I'm doing a few steps. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm instantiating the app delegate and the home screen, the constants. And this guy is the view controller for the destination, this guy's the app delegate, right? So let's go ahead and copy these guys into this code here. We're gonna instantiate the app delegate, appdel UI shared application.delegate as app delegate. That's the syntax to get it. We're gonna save it in that variable called appdel, and we're gonna also create a new variable called home screen. And in this case, I can call it main screen because that's what I named it. So self.storyboard instantiate view controller, and I named it main VC. And here I have to cast it as main view controller. Okay? So once I have this, I have an instance of the main controller here in the loading view controller. So because I have an instance, I can set some information, right? I can say the main screen, the data, which I have yet to create in my main view controller, I can create a variable called data. That's going to be a string. Is it optional? Let's call this my data. Sometimes if you name things like very generic names, it'll conflict with the system stuff. So in my loading view controller, I can say main screen dot my data equals to, oh, I named this the same thing, but I can say it's just my data, right? This guy, the stuff that I got back. So I'm setting that. And then the last part of it, right here, I'm assigning the cache data to that view controller. Is what we did. And the last step here is going to be call the method in the appdelegate.swift to transition to the main view controller. All right, so we're going to go over here and we're going to say, hey, appdel, because I have an instance of you, I'm going to run a method on you called move to VC, and I'm going to pass in this view controller that I instantiated. In this case, it's not the home screen anymore; it's the main screen, right? And because it's in my appdel, now I have to define in my app delegate that function, right? So here I have to define func, what was it called? Move to VC with an argument called main screen. And this guy is going to be of type main view controller.
That's just giving that app delegate.
Yeah. You're just writing a helper function that you define. All right? And everything is good because this is what I'm passing in. Over here, my loading view controller, this main screen here is of type main view controller. I'm passing that in. Because it's Swift 3, it's gonna, well, that's good. There's no errors. Right? So I'm passing that in, I'm calling the app delegate. The app delegate should now get my main screen, that view controller that I instantiated, and this instance will have this data attached to it, and I'm just taking this instance and I'm just passing it in like that. So what's the problem here? Yeah, there we go. So now in my app delegate, I have to do some things to transition, right? So in the app delegate, in this move to VC function, we're going to change the root view controller from the loading VC to the main VC. And the way we do that is with these two lines of code. Okay, root view controller equals to not the destination. I named it main screen, but that's going to be the destination. And then this line here, make key invisible, is like to force it to transition over, right? Cool. So now, once we're in the main view controller, let's say, hey, when the view did load, I want, let's say I want a label here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and make a label. We're just going to put it on the very top. Uh-oh. Okay, still recording. Don't jinx it. Right, it is getting really slow, so I'm going to stop this. Okay, make this nice and big. Now in our main view controller, we're going to have to drag it over. This guy, drag it over like that. Main label. In the view.load, I'm going to set self dot main label. What the hell? Main label dot text equals to self dot my data. It's probably going to tell me to unwrap this. So before it even tells me to do that, I'm going to do that because my computer is just really slow. But yeah, so once I transition over to this main view, now you should see that this label is going to be whatever the data I got back is. Right? So let's run it. Let's hope that this works. If it does, then we're like 90% done. Right? Yeah, I also want to show you guys how you actually cache things in the app delegate between the different view controllers. And it's really useful for you if you have a bunch of view controllers that are not related to each other, but you want to have data persist. So if I have this thing that I've loaded once from, say, Core Data, I don't want to go, every time I go back to that view controller, I don't want to have to go back into Core Data to get that, right? But everything that I cached on that view controller is now gone. The reason is because that view controller instance is now replaced by a new instance of that view controller, right? But the app delegate will always remain. That is the constant. So you can stash things in the app delegate and just get it later. Right, so I'm clicking the button, loading force powers, boom, hello here. I'm the data. Right, so it goes really quickly. So that worked out pretty well. Let's say let's say here in my loading view controller, let's say I have some other data that I want to do. Let's say when the view loads, I'm gonna have a variable here that's my cool cache array. That's equal to an array of strings. Obviously, it could be anything, your own custom class. And this is going to be, let's do this, like that. It's going to be an optional. When the view did load, I'm going to say self.cool cache array equals to this, it's going to be equals to this array that says, Henderson say Oscar etc. Okay, my computer's gonna blow up soon. Yeah, don't feel bad. I don't want it to crash. I couldn't write all your names. I know all your names, right? Okay, so that is gonna be. Is there an error here that I'm not seeing? All right, I don't think that's a real error. I think it's just my computer freaking out. But let's pretend that I got this, pretend I got this from Core Data. Okay, getting stuff from Core Data is kind of it takes some time, right? So if I got it here, then I can totally just stash it in my app delegate when I do this, because I now have an instance of my app delegate. I can stash it in there. But before I can do that, I need to go to my app delegate and actually create that variable. Right? So I got to say, hey, variable, my cache, you are going to be an array of strings, and you're an optional. And if we do that, then if we go to loading view controller over here, as soon as we get the app delegate, we can say appdel dot, it's going to show me my cache, equals to self dot my cool cache array. Like that. The types match up, so it's fine. And now, in my main view controller, I can instantiate another instance of the app delegate, like so. In the view did load, I can say, hey, instantiate the app del again, and then print appdel dot my cache. So there you would have access to that information in another view controller now because you stashed it in the app delegate, right? 0. Like that. Okay. So let's run this again. And in addition to, the label changing, we should also see something print out. And the thing is printing out is going to be printing out Anderson because it's the first element in that array. So you can store anything you want in the app delegate, and it'll be there. So before you load things from core data, you can go to the app delegate and say, hey, app delegate, because your variable is optional, are you nil? If you're nil, then I know that, hey, it's not cached yet. So I got to go to core data, go get the data. After I'm done getting it, I will cache it to the app delegate, and I'll use the data I got back. If I go to the app delegate and it's not nil, then I can just take that and just use it. So I don't have to do the core data thing, right? Click the button, it's gonna load. Hello, I'm the data. Over here we see optional Anderson, right? So pretty straightforward. Now you have the ability to kind of optimize your apps and use the app delegate in a way that that will. It's kind of like the super global. The thing, it's like the model. The model is like in Angular, the model doesn't change. It's there. You instantiate a model when the app loads, but the views, the controllers will instantiate new ones every time you go to a different page. The model is the same. So you can save data in the model and just pass it down to the controllers, however you like.
So would you use something like this if you had a login on your app and you just wanted